One was the NBA's most unstoppable offensive force.
Chamberlain was a giant. He could do anything he wanted to do. It was awesome out there.
From the Boston Celtics, number 6, Bill Russell.
The other revolutionized the art of defense.
Bill Russell probably changed the game as much as any man that's ever lived.
Together, they formed one of the most compelling rivalries in all of sports.
In the history of the NBA, that was the greatest matchup of all time.
Two very different men, both larger than life, and forever linked in history. Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell will always be remembered as giants of the game. Hello everybody, I'm Ahmad Rashad. Welcome to Giants of the Game, Russell and Chamberlain. Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain share a unique place in NBA history. It's not just that each man is a legend in his own right, it's the fact that together they form one of the greatest rivalries in the history of sports. In fact, back in the 60s, you could walk into any barbershop and hear people debating, well, a couple of questions, but the most important one was who's better, Russell or Chamberlain? Now, what made the matchup so great is that it featured two completely different styles, and those differences were clear right from the very beginning. Wilton Norman Chamberlain has always commanded attention. As a young phenom at Philadelphia's Overbrook High School, his awesome strength and skills made him the most sought-after recruit in the country. He went to Kansas, leading his team to the 1957 NCAA Finals, then barnstormed with the famed Harlem Globetrotters, before signing with the Philadelphia Warriors in 1959. William Felton Russell, on the other hand, was so lightly regarded as a high school senior that he received just one scholarship offer from the University of San Francisco. But there he would blossom, leading the Dons to a 55-game winning streak and 2 national championships. He went on to capture a gold medal with the 1956 U.S. Olympic team. But with Bill's unique emphasis on defense and rebounding, there were still some doubters, including the St. Louis Hawks, who, after drafting him in the first round, traded him to the Boston Celtics. Even though his defensive-minded style didn't attract the same kind of attention as Chamberlain, from his very first season in 1957, Russell revolutionized the game.
Russell was the ultimate team player, and he was something new and startling and very subtle.
He made shot blocking an art.
He would shut down the basket, completely shut it down. Every shot went up, he took it away.
You couldn't get the layup, because if you went for the layup, invariably Big Bill was going to get it and slam it down your throat.
I went around my man going for a layup, and he blocked a couple of shots on me. And then the next time I got around him, I missed a layup looking for him.
He was a lion of a competitor. He was the greatest competitor I ever was around, who refused to lose.
For Russell, the ultimate test began in 1959 with the arrival of Chamberlain, the most dominant force the game had ever seen.
Wilt was not his whole goal in life, wasn't just winning a game. His goal in life was to be the most dominant player that ever played.
During his 14-year career, Wilt compiled a staggering list of achievements. In 1962, he averaged 50 points for the season, including the memorable night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, when he set one of sport's most amazing records, scoring 100 points in one game.
He made it! A different dunk! He made it! The fans are all over the floor!
Could score every time he wanted to. That's what he could do. I mean, he was strong, he was powerful, he was the strongest guy in the league. Jumped higher than anyone in the league. And once he got the ball, go to the basket, no one really could defend him.
He was such an overpowering physical figure that he could rule the game.
I think, you know, in effect, he was larger than life in a lot of people's minds.
So when Chamberlain's devastating offense collided head-on with Russell's brilliant defense, it created a classic matchup.
You know, it was like two titans of the game meeting, and you'd have headlines, and Russell versus Chamberlain.
There were 2 games going on within one. It was Chamberlain against Russell, and, the Celtics are playing the 76ers.
They were the league. You know, I mean, people paid to see Russell and Chamberlain because that was the great challenge, the great duel between the two giants.
Wilt and Russell was the greatest rivalry of all time because it was kind of biblical.
You have two giants. You know, there's the bad giant and there's a good giant. I mean, always Wilt was considered Goliath.
And he referred to himself as Goliath. He had his signature on an article in Sport Magazine, Nobody Loves Goliath. He played this thing for all it's worth, that was part of the fun. It was great theater.
But the plot would come to have a familiar twist as Wilt's teams lost 7 out of 8 playoff series to the Celtics. During Russell's 13 seasons, Boston won 11 NBA titles, including an astounding 8 in a row.
Wilt was a Paul Bunyan figure, mythic in what he could personally do. Russell, on the other hand, was woven into the team more than anybody else that I've ever known, ever in any sport whatsoever.
The duels with Russell were classic, and Russell won most of them, and you can't deny that. But the most dominant player, one-on-one, is Wilt Chamberlain.
Wilt won 2 championships of his own with the '67 Sixers and the '72 Lakers, both considered among the greatest NBA teams of all time. But beyond the titles they won and the records they set, Russell and Chamberlain will also be remembered for their lasting impact on the game.
They were household names. They were on the cover of magazines.
It was one of the very first attempts to bring the movie star quality to this particular sport.
Everybody had an opinion on those two guys. It was this entirely different way of looking at the game, and it was just electric.
In many respects, it was Russell and Chamberlain who really put the NBA on the map. When they met, it was often on national television on Sunday afternoons, and those games helped the league capture public attention. And it didn't matter whether Wilt was playing for the Warriors, the Sixers, or the Lakers at the time, because anytime he faced Russell, it was always an event. Wilt was once asked his fondest memories of the rivalry, and he said, "Bill is the one with all the fond memories because he has all the titles." Now, in just a moment, both will share their memories as they spoke with Bob Costas, and you'll see that conversation when we return in just a moment.
And the Celtics, they have done it again.
Bill, this must have been a great win for you.
Welcome back to Giants of the Game, Russell and Chamberlain. One of the things that made their rivalry so special is that it had a chance to build. Unlike today, when teams meet only a few times over the course of a season, Russell and Chamberlain played up to 13 times during the season with the possibility of 7 more times in the playoffs. And fans were captivated watching the two superstars go head-to-head. Today, nearly 3 decades later, Bill and Wilt can sit back and reflect on the competition between them. It's one of the topics they discussed recently when they sat down with my colleague, Bob Costas.
Somebody said to me just before we started taping this, you know, these two guys now, these age-old adversaries, they're like the Sunshine Boys, the way they interact with each other.
Sunshine Boys, oh, God.
Like grumpy old man be more like.
Grumpy old man. See, now, I don't think of myself as being old. I don't, you know, I'm not going for, you know, the Sunshine Boys and old. I'm still a contemporary.
Of his.
I'm going to leave that alone. How about that?
Okay, all right, okay.
No question, you each would have been championship players on your own. But what would you have been without each other?
Let me answer first as I'm the youngest. You understand? I think that you always need the best to bring the best out in you. So I was always fortunate to have to know that I was going to play against the Celtics and William Felton Russell. The other teams in the NBA always knew that if we were going to win and be winners, we had to go into the Boston Gardens and come out some kind of way, you know, winning. And so you got inspired, and you always got up to do that. And how they maintained for so long, I'm not sure, but we had to continually try to drive ourselves to be just out there with them without being embarrassed.
What would you have been without him?
We would have still won about 11 or 12 championships, but it wouldn't have been nearly as much fun.
Because, fun, that was fun.
Yes,
okay.
Because the winning is only important, at least it was to me, if you beat the best. It's not, you're not just, you know, if you go out and beat guys that aren't any good, that's no big deal. But my friend Wilt Norman Chamberlain, was far and away the best player I've ever played against, for a number of reasons. First of all, physically, he was still the most imposing physical player that's ever played in this league, period. There's no one that's come close to him in terms of just physical prowess. On top of that, he's a great athlete. And the last thing that created a problem was he was smart.
Here's a little bit of a misconception. Russell's teams won the championships.
Right.
Russell played very well against Chamberlain, but a lot of people think, hey, Wilt was scoring 50 against everybody else, and he wasn't doing diddly against Russ. But there were games the Celtics might have won where you got 45 points, 28, 30 boards. I think you had your
62 one night, I remember very clearly.
62 off you?
Yeah. I won't ever forget that.
And what about 55 rebounds one time?
Yeah.
That's
So
okay.
I don't remember. I don't forget those things. You know, I always look back